Hi and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to learn about drop spinning. Before you do anything else, I want you to just play with your wool. Get a feel for it. If you have a bat, strip it into smaller bits. If you have roving, begin to pre-draft it. Gently hold the tail of your wool with your non-dominant hand. With your dominant hand, grab the very tip of your wool between your four fingers and the palm of your hand or the base of your thumb and pull. Don't pull the wool apart, but thin it out. Continue thinning it out, or drafting your wool, until you have at least a couple feet of it. If you're just starting, don't worry about consistency right now, but know that when you're ready, consistency in drafting is what will lead to consistency in your spun yarn. To get started with your spindle, hook it into a thicker spot at the tip of your wool, or wrap the tip around the hook. Turn your spindle to allow the twist to begin to build up in your drafted wool. It doesn't matter which direction you go, at least for now, but always spin in the same direction. So make sure it's the direction that feels the most comfortable to you. Continue turning with your spindle until you have about 1 to 2 feet of length. Pre-draft more wool as needed. You can also park your spindle at any time to draft your wool with both hands. While turning your spindle, firmly hold the wool with your non-spinning hand. Keep tension between the hook and your hand. Build up twist in the yarn, but not so much that it begins to double back on itself. As twist builds up, loosen your grip on the wool and slide your hand down. You can always park your spindle and bring your other hand to help. Once you have a good length, you can bring the hooked end of your yarn down to the bottom of the hook, then bring the yarn around the side of your spindle whorl. If you don't have a notch on your spindle whorl, you may have to hold it with your thumb. Begin wrapping your yarn around the shaft of your spindle, keeping tension between your hand and the spindle the whole time. Leave about 6 to 8 inches of spun yarn, come back up the side of your spindle whorl, through a notch if you have one, and rehook the yarn. Note that your yarn should come up from the back side of your hook. If it does not, you need to adjust the position of your yarn or turn your hook. If the yarn or hook are out of position, your yarn may be inclined to unhook while you're drop spinning. For now, park the shaft of your spindle in between your knees or thighs. Pre-draft more wool. At this point, if you're not comfortable dropping the spindle to spin, you can continue holding your spindle and turning it. This is an excellent way to focus on drafting and to practice sliding your hands down your wool while you spin. If you feel ready to try, firmly hold your wool just above the twist in your non-spinning hand. Lift your spindle up and let it hang, just for a second. You'll see it turn and your yarn start to untwist. Stop the spindle and spin it in the opposite direction. There are lots of ways to do this, but I like to grab the end of the spindle shaft and flick it. And this is where it gets fun. Take lots of time practicing this. Get to know your wool, your spindle, and your body. Once you give the spindle a good flick, you can first park your spindle in your lap again, and then let your hand slide down the wool, or, eventually, you'll drop the spindle completely and bring your spinning hand to the wool, pinching at the top of the twist, sliding your other hand, letting go of the pinch, and continuing along your wool until your spindle slows and starts spinning in the opposite direction. When it does, either flick it again or wrap your yarn. Note that gravity is now keeping the tension between your wool and the spindle. Eventually, you'll be able to use both hands to draft so you don't have to pre-draft anymore, and the more you practice this, you'll get quicker and quicker. Continue doing this until you've used up your wool, wrapping whenever you feel you've reached a point that you need to. Most drop spindles like these can handle about 3 to 4 ounces of wool max. But then what? Your yarn actually isn't done. If you take a length of it and let it droop, you'll see it twist back on itself. Right now, you have a single ply yarn with a lot of energy and twist in it. There are ways to set the twist in a single ply, but usually you'll want to ply it, which means twisting it in the opposite direction with either itself or with another single ply yarn. Do note that both have to have been spun in the same direction. There are many ways to do this. You can create a 2-ply with this single yarn by making a center pull ball on an Ostapin. You can also create a 2-ply by making an Andean bracelet on your own wrist or hand, or by using a paddle, which is helpful if you have a lot of wool. You can also create a 2-ply by making a 2-ply with this single yarn by making a center pull ball on an Ostapin. You can also create a 2-ply by making an Andean bracelet on your own wrist or hand, or by using a paddle, which is helpful if you have a lot of wool. You can also create a 3-ply with this single yarn by Navajo plying it, also called chain plying. But probably the simplest and easiest method is to spin it with another single ply yarn. If you have just one spindle, you want to pre-weigh your wool and split it in half by weight. Spin one half and then wrap it onto a toilet paper roll, a paper towel roll, or a dowel rod. Spin the other half and do the same. Then put those into a makeshift lazy Kate. A shoebox with holes for dowels works just fine. Alternatively, if you have 3 spindles, you can use your makeshift lazy Kate and ply directly from your spindles, or you can put your spindles into a box and spin directly from them. Use your spindle to spin your 2 single plies in the opposite direction. They'll want to do that naturally, but the spindle will speed things along. As you go, you can let your yarn hang to see if it's balanced. Any twist means you need to unspin or add more twist. I always over-twist my plied yarn and then wash it, sometimes even plying it a second time, but if you're not going to wash it, you don't need to. There are a lot more methods and details for each of the steps we've covered, but hopefully that will get you started. If you have any questions, send me an email at info@locallymadeinnashville.com. I'm also happy to give private lessons or teach a class or group. As always, practice, practice, practice. It may take hours, days, weeks, or even months to get the hang of this. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy drop spinning.